There are several reasons why you might just want to make your own custom head pins. Maybe it's late at night and you're working on a project that you want to finish, but it's late and the stores are closed. Maybe there's a pandemic going on and you don't want to go to the store and the delivery times are really long. Maybe you just want the satisfaction of making them yourself and making your jewelry creative and unique with all of the findings. Whatever your reason, in today's video, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of ways to make your own custom head pins using just a bit of wire. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. So let's first talk about the wire you use for making your head pins. You can really use any wire that works with the scale and proportions of your project. But one thing to keep in mind is that it needs to be heavy enough to be strong enough to hold its shape and hold whatever beads or things you're going to be stringing onto it. I would suggest working with 20 or maybe 18 or maybe as small as 22 gauge wire, somewhere in that vicinity, but you'll have to experiment with what you have. If you get much finer than 22 gauge wire, you may find that it's not going to hold its shape well for you and it will too easily pull out of shape. There are ways to strengthen our wire. Now, most of the time in my jewelry, I don't use the colored wire. It has a coating on it that gives it that pretty color, but it comes off really easily. Once you start using tools on it, you end up marring that finish. So what I prefer to use is bare copper wire or sterling silver or silver filled wire. I am going to demonstrate today on these brightly colored wires just so you can clearly see what I'm doing. Now, when you're doing this, you can actually work right off the spool. It doesn't matter so much for some of these, but a few of them use a fair amount of wire. So working off the spool means that you'll have plenty and enough to make your head pin as long as you need it to be. The first step is to always trim that little end with your flush cutters, with the flush part facing the wire you're keeping, so that you have a nice flush cut. Now this first one is just a basic utilitarian head pin. It's really not decorative, but if you're out of head pins and you just need something that's going to stop a bead from sliding off the wire, all you need to do is grasp the end with your chain nose pliers, make a fold, and then flatten it. And sometimes the wire wants to spin around on you, and it can be actually a little challenging to get in there and flatten that, but keep going, you'll get it. There we go. Now you can see I still have this on the spool, and I can decide how long I want my head pin to be and cut it off. That is just a basic head pin that's going to hold a bead in place. Many thanks to those of you who have decided to support me on Patreon. It makes a big difference and is a huge factor in whether or not this channel stays on YouTube. If you're a regular here and you watch my videos every week, you might consider supporting me. And if you like my videos, don't forget that patrons have the opportunity to get up to 2 bonus tutorials every month. But maybe you want something a little bit more decorative. Well, this one's really cute. This one starts with round nose pliers. I've got a flush cut there. And what you might want to do is grab a fine point Sharpie marker and mark your round nose pliers all the way around all the sides at the point that indicates the size of the loops you want to make. This will make your pieces look a lot nicer because all your loops will be the same size. So the way you make a loop is hold the pliers with your palm facing up, put your wire in between the jaws of the round nose pliers right at that mark, and when you feel across, you shouldn't be able to feel any of that wire. It shouldn't be down below the jaws or sticking up. It should be right at that level. Now bend your wrist, twisting it towards you. And then turn it back so that your hand is facing up again and bend your wrist again. That's the motion that you use for making loops. Now there is a problem with making loops with wire, and that is that that very end is just about never
round. It's always straight. It's just the nature of the wire and the way it's formed in the tools. So if you want that end to be round, here's a great little trick, and I will do this on all of my loops that I'm going to be making. Take my flush cutters, go in with the flush side towards the part that I'm going to be keeping, and just trim off that little end. And now can you see that the wire that remains is curved? Once again, take my round nose pliers and do that wrist twist action. And now can you see how much more round that loop is? Next we'll tuck that wire onto one of the jaws and then bring the wire around the other jaw. But before we finish, we'll have to slip it out, pop it back on again, and make a figure 8. And this is a really cute head pin. It's as simple as that. Just a little bit of a decoration. And again, the benefit of having it on the spool is that we can cut it off at whatever length we want. If you like that one, but you wish it were maybe a little bit more, we can do that. Start out just the way we did for that first one. Make a loop. Trim off that little bit. Close the loop. Tuck it in. Make your second loop. But now, tuck your jaw into the other loop and then position one of the jaws between those two and wrap your wire around that one for a third loop. And you have this darling little clover leaf. Then you can come in with chain nose. I'm going to trim this off now because it's spinning around and being annoying. There we go. Come in with chain nose pliers right where those loops all meet. And just give that a little bit of a bend so that it comes straight up in between them. Where this is starting to get some dimension to it, this is a good place to come in with nylon jaw pliers. Give that a squeeze, and you may have to do some adjusting afterwards. So to get that wire centered, just put the jaws right in those other holes, and then that will push that wire that your beads are going to go into right into the center. Here's this one, and here's one that's made in a slightly heavier gauge. So this is 20 gauge wire, and this is 22. If you're using the lighter gauge wire, you definitely want to squeeze it a few times and just harden that so that it will keep its shape. You actually do it for both. Really do it for any wire you use. But that's super cute. Most of us love spirals for decoration, so let's go ahead and do some spiral head pins. There are so many variations you can make on this. I'm going to start this one at the very tips of my round nose pliers because I want as small a center to my spiral as possible. And again, I'm going to trim off that little straight bit. This is one of those where it's really beneficial to make it from the spool because the spirals can use a fair amount of wire. So now we'll just get that tucked in there so we have a nice round loop. Now what you do is you hold onto that loop with flat nose pliers. So it should be, yeah, there we go. It should be parallel with the table, and the loop should be facing away from you. So grab it with your flat nose pliers, and you can just use your other hand to give that wire a bend and bend around. And you can make as many wraps as you want. So there's 2 because I'm right back across from where I started. I think I'll do a third. And just finish across from where I started. Grab that so that it's sticking up above it, like a lollipop. There you go. And there it is, a really cute and decorative head pin. But maybe you want to go even fancier than that. can. Start it the exact same way. Make your spiral. Now, once you've made as many spirals as you want, you need to decide what kind of a shape do you want to make around your spiral. You can have a square or a rectangle or a triangle. And this one, by the way, is a good reason for why you need to do your work off the spool, because it's used up a fair amount of wire, and I was left with not much usable afterwards. So you just kind of have to picture in your mind. It might help to sketch it out to have an idea of how you want that to go. So if we're going to do the triangle, I'll picture that I want one down here, one here, and one here, and then it's going to come back up from here. So I'm going to hold my pliers so that where the wire is going to bend is just past that edge of the outer wire in the spiral. That. I bent that in with my fingers. Now you can see if you're gentle with your tools, then you don't have a whole lot of marring with this wire, but it can be challenging. So now I want right here, about there. Here we go. This can take a little bit of practice and trial and error to get your angles just where you want them, especially this last one. There we go. Yeah, that one is always, because you have to account for the thickness of the wire in your bend. And if you need, for some reason, to work with these off the spool, just cut yourself a long piece, like maybe 12 inches or 10 inches or something. Cut yourself a long piece, know how long it is, and then measure what's left when you're done, and then you will know how much each one of these will use. See, it's a little counterintuitive. It's further over than you might think to make that stem centered. Say about there. There we go. And isn't that cute? And you can do any of those shapes. Now notice you can do the arrow pointing up, the arrow pointing down. Like I said, a diamond, a square, or a rectangle. You can even make a heart, which is really cute. And if you look online at hearts, look online for like heart spiral head pin, you'll find quite a number of variations. This is just the way I decided to make mine. Start with your spiral. Unless you want a pretty big heart head pin, I'm just going to start here with a 2-wrap spiral. So here I've just gone around twice to make my spiral, and this is actually going to be one lobe of the heart. Then you need to decide how far down you want the point of your heart to be. So maybe about there. Bend it up. Again, this can be kind of tricky to gauge, and it may take just a little bit of practice and trial and error. But if you get your round nose pliers in and figure on a part of your round nose pliers, it's about the same width around as that spiral. Like I said, you just kind of have to make a guess to begin with and then adjust. Well, that was pretty good. Wow. That didn't happen the first time I did it. Then I'm going to grab it here, bend it out, and then up. And again, down around. My round nose. And just kind of shape it using your pliers and your fingers and whatever works. And isn't that adorable? These are both 22 gauge wire. Now this last one is one of my favorites. I'm going to make this one with 20 gauge just because I love how it looks. If you make this with anything heavier, you may find it to be kind of tricky. And this is another one that's good to work from the spool to begin with. So start with a clean cut wire and your round nose pliers, and you're going to start around near the thicker part of your round nose pliers, and you just want to coil around, and when it comes back around, make sure that you're sending that end towards the narrow part, and just keep coiling in the same spot. So you could make a coil as long as you want, and as long as you keep it in the same spot, it'll be the same distance around. Now at this point you'll have to do a little bit of guesstimating as to how much wire you need. So cut yourself some excess. What we're going to do is make this into a knot. It's just so cool. Grab that wire right across from this end. We'll cover up this end with the wire here just by bending it up right in that spot. So it's going right over that end. And now tuck the wire in through the hole. And you'll probably need pliers to pull it through. You may have to guide it a little with your fingers and your tool. There's one, and make sure it's covering that end, and then repeat 2 more times, and you'll find the wire gets pretty hard. Even the 22 gauge was fairly hard by the time I started doing the 3rd wrap. Just pay attention to where this wire is going. I want it to land right next to that first one, which it did not. Back that out a little. Now this is where having the coated wire is going to be tricky. Yeah, because I'm going to end up making a mess of it, probably handling it with my tools. Like I said, it isn't really what I would choose to use for making jewelry. I just wanted to demonstrate with it so that you could see more clearly. There we go. And one more nice neat wrap next to those two. I mean, you could make them messy, but something about this I think looks good if they're all nicely placed next to each other. Come on, get in there. There. Isn't that just the coolest thing? I love it. I think it's one of my favorites. Here's another one I made, also out of 20 gauge. I think I started with a smaller coil. And here's one made out of the 22 gauge. So very cool. And we haven't even covered hammered head pins, which I will cover in another video for you. So I hope that you take these ideas and run with them and make the most of your time. Instead of having to run out to the store or place an online order for head pins, you can make them yourself and make them with style. Happy creating.